This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Two major concerns guided this work. One was to reconstruct a history of Mexican-Anglo relations in Texas since the Alamo. In geographic terms, the focus was primarily directed to a 200-mile-wide strip paralleling the Mexican border from Brownsville to El Paso. I considered this history important because of the fragile historical sense most people have of the American Southwest. The vestiges of a Mexican past are still evident. In the old cities of the region, the missions and governors' palaces, the old Mexicos, the annual fiestas and the like, remind one that there is a history here, but it seems remote and irrelevant. There is no memory, for example, of annexation as a major historical event. What happened to the annexed Mexicans? The question points to a larger lapse in memory. What does the 19th century frontier period have to do with the present? There is, of course, a popular and romanticized awareness of Southwestern history. Indians and Mexicans were subdued, ranches fenced, railroads built, and so on, until the West was completely won. A triumphalist literature has enshrined the experience of the Old West in tales of victory and progress. Drama, the easiest virtue to fashion for Southwestern history, has long taken the place of explanation and interpretation. Because this history has seldom been thought of in economic and sociological terms, much of the road connecting the past with the present remains obscured. When the legendary aspects are stripped away from the frontier experience, for instance, cowboys surface as wage workers on the new American ranches and as indebted servants on the old haciendas. The barbed wire fence movement of the 1880s becomes not just a sign of progress, but an enclosure movement that displaced landless cattlemen and maverick cowboys. And the famed cattle trails commemorated in Western folklore become an instrument by which the region was firmly tied into national and international markets. The failure of memory, then, is as much sociological as it is historical. The absence of a sociological memory is nowhere more evident than in the study of race and ethnic relations in the Southwest. Compared with the significant literature on race relations in the American South, similar work in Western Americana appears tentative and uncertain. An extensive literature has addressed the major events, the origins of the Mexican War, the founding of the cattle trails, and so on, but only rarely has the discussion focused on the consequences of these events for the various peoples living in the region. In recent years, a few notable works have begun to investigate this area, but this territory remains largely uncharted. It was imperative in this context to present a different kind of history, an interpretive history that would outline the connections between the past and the present while maintaining a focus on Mexican-Anglo relations. My second major concern, then, was to ask this history some sociological questions about ethnicity, social change, and society itself. In one sense, this book can be described as a Southwestern history about nation-building, economic development, and ethnic relations. In a more comparative manner, the history points to the familiar experience of conflict and accommodation between distinct societies and peoples throughout the world. In describing the situation of Texas Mexicans in the early 20th century, for example, historian T.R. Fehrenbach has drawn parallels to Israel's West Bank, French Algeria, and South Africa. In contrast to these parallels, the Texas history of Mexicans and Anglos points to a relationship that, although frequently violent and tense, has led to a situation that today may be characterized as a form of integration. An interpretation that attempts to serve both sociology and history must invariably make some difficult decisions about the organization of the presentation.